Hello and welcome to this video tutorial for Prog 1210 Rapid Application Development. This tutorial will take us through the basics of creating a web application using Entity Framework. We start by creating a new project. The type of project that we create is an ASP.NET web application. We need to give our project an appropriate name. In this case, our program is going to display information from our band database. So I'm going to name our project Band Practice. I'm going to use the empty template, but add folders and core references for web forms. This option creates the app data folder for us, as well as putting in a few references that we'll need when we're using Entity Framework. You can see that our app data folder has already been created for us. Now our first step is to add the database to our project. In order to do this, I'm going to put the database into the app data folder using Windows Explorer. Right now the database file is on my desktop. I'm going to copy the file from here, navigate into my project folder until I get into the app data folder. Now I paste the database file into the app data folder. In order to include the database in the project, I'm going to right-click here on App Data and choose Add Existing Item. Find our database file inside the App Data folder and add it to the project. Here in our Server Explorer, we can double-click on the name of the database file to connect to it and open it up. We can use this view to make sure that all of the entities in our database exist as we expect. Our band database includes two tables, instrument and musician, one view, and several stored procedures. Now that our database is part of our project, the next step is to create the entity data model that models after our database. In order to do this, I right-click on the name of the project, choose Add, and choose New Item. The type of item that we want to add is not in the web list of options here. So I'm going to navigate up a level into Visual C#, and here you'll see ADO.NET Entity Data Model. We'll select that option, come down here and give our data model a name. I'll click on Add, the model is going to contain an EF Designer from Database. The reason why we select this option is because we already have a database that we want to base our entity data model off of. We'll select Next and choose our data connection. Because we've already added our database, your database will be in the list here. You can see the connection strength and the settings. Make a note of the name here, because we'll need to know this name later when we create our DB context object in code. Click on Next. We'll select the newest version that we have, Entity Framework 6.0. We'll press Next again, and this screen in the wizard allows us to see our database objects. We can decide which objects we want to include in our entity data model. For the purposes of this project, we're going to include all of the database objects. So in order to do that, I'm just going to make sure that everything is checked in this window. That way, every object in the database will be included in our entity data model. Click Finish to complete the wizard. Now you'll see once this process is finished, many files are created here in our Solution Explorer. Also, you will notice that the model appears in this central area here. The name of the file containing the model will be bandmodel.edmx. You can see how it appears as a diagram, showing all of our entities from our database. So here's representing the instrument table, this one representing the musician table, and this third one here representing the view. You'll notice it also models the one-to-many relationship between instrument and musician. That is, each musician can only play one instrument, but an instrument can be played by many musicians. You'll also make a note of the navigation properties between the two. That is, you can move from musician to the instrument that that musician plays through this navigation property. Now, before we conclude the video, I'm just going to put in a few of the minor fixes that we need to do in order to make this work. The first is to avoid the issue from the web config file when we're using JavaScript validation. Now, it's not going to come into play right away, but once we get into creating a web form with validators, we'll need to fix this up so that we don't get that JavaScript error. So I'm going to go into the web config file, and we're going to paste in that little snippet of code that I've posted up on Blackboard. So in my Blackboard window here, I'm just going to copy this. This little snippet of code is found in the week 3 folder. I'll copy it here and just paste it right into our web config file. Make sure that you paste it after the entity framework tag here, not inside of the tag. So there's our fix for unobtrusive validation mode. We'll save this and now close it. The other fix that we're going to do involves that provider manifest error. This error appears when we try to create an entity data source. So in order to prevent that error from coming up, I'm going to open up this window in Code View. In order to do that, I'm going to navigate to bandmodel.edmx in my Solution Explorer, right-click on it, and choose Open With. Now because it's already open, we see this message appearing here. So I'm just going to click Yes to save any changes. It will close the file and then ask how I want to reopen it. I'm going to choose the XML text editor. This is going to allow us to edit the code behind the model. So we'll click Yes. It's asking if I want to close it before I can reopen it. Now here's our code. In order to fix that error between the data source and this file, I'm just going to find this little tag here, provider manifest token, and change the 2012 value to 2008. We'll make sure that we save, and I'll close this file. So now we're ready to create our web form and start making a website that users can see. This concludes part 1 of the videos. Please go on to part 2, creating the web form with a grid view and data source.